All right. So good evening to all of you, including the community that is joining us this evening. It's Monday evening, September 28th. We are hosting this evening our second information session on the Zoom platform on community policing. So back in August 20th, myself and Chief of Police Shawn Dulude had a conversation for about an hour on the Zoom platform, which was streamed live to Facebook on the MCA website, and just talked about community policing in Akwesasne. This evening, this is a follow-up session to that. Some of the items that we will cover may have been covered at the last session of August 20th. I am joined this evening with a few members of the council, a member of the Akwesasne Police Commission, and our Chief of Police. So I'll just take a moment to go around to the members who are on to introduce themselves to the community. We'll start with Gary.
Akwesasne, this is Gary Cole. I'm the chairperson of the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Commission.
Vanessa.
There you go. I am Chief Vanessa Adams, Kawanoge District.
Daryl.
There you go. Good evening. Chief Daryl Lazore, Public Safety Portfolio Holder.
There you go. Chief Connie Lazore, Gisline District, Public Safety.
Shawn, you want to introduce yourself?
Sego, good evening. Shawn Dulude, your Chief of Police for the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service.
All right, thank you. And we also have on the system, you may see, I'm not sure if it's projecting out, but a member of our communications team who is also assisting with the Zoom. Again, this is something new for us. As you know, we're currently in a global pandemic, and which has forced us to have to use alternative means of communicating with the community, since it is currently not safe to be able to gather and have traditional forms of general meetings or information sessions through the community on various topics. So what we have done is we have taken to the Zoom platform, which we are using for our general meetings. We have used for the last information session of August 20th on community policing. And we've also used this for another information session. So this is what we're going to continue to be using for the next little while until the pandemic allows for us to be able to meet in person. But in the meantime, this is what we have to work with. This is being again streamed live on our MCA Facebook page. It is being recorded. We will record it and then have it on our YouTube page, as well as other social media platforms for individuals to watch at a later date. So earlier in August, we had started hearing concerns from community members and received more and more questions from the community in relation to policing in Akwesasne. And we wanted to, in response to that, we had set up an information session virtually on August 20th, as I mentioned, to go over a number of discussion topics, which included recruitment processes for police services, a bit about complaints, as well as some of the roles of the commission. And this evening, we're going to go through a few more of the questions that we had received on prior to the session of August 20th, as well as the questions that we received on the Facebook. Now, understanding that we have received some questions that we've already gone through, but this evening we're going to do a bit of that, go through some of that again for those that hadn't watched the session of August 20th, and hopefully be able to answer some questions that the community has put forward to us, or just some concerns, or just wanting to know more how the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service operates within our community, because the first appointment of a chief of police in our community was back in 1972. So there's a lot of history behind policing in our community, and prior to that, there was the RCMP were in our community. So we've come a long way. We just want to make sure that the community continues to be kept up to date and is able to also ask questions. So Shawn, I'm going to turn to you. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a little about who Shawn Dulude is, what some of the experience that you have brought into the position of Chief of Police, and one of the direct questions that we've been asked by the community is why is it you decided to come to Akwesasne to do community policing? So I'll turn it to you, Shawn.
For sure. As most of you already know, I spent 25 years of my career in provincial policing in the province of Quebec. Why I'm here now today in Akwesasne, and I've been for the last 3 years, is my experience working in the north of Quebec, northeastern part of the province, with different First Nation communities when I was station director in those areas. So over I would say the latter part of my commission career as an SQ officer, meaning a director of a detachment or regional commander, I had the opportunity to work with three different communities in 2 different regions of our province. And I knitted close ties with with people from either band councils or the people from the community while I worked there. When I was reaching the end of my career with the SQ, because after 25 years, I figured, it was time for me maybe to move on and let some younger upcoming directors take over. I started looking for different avenues and possibilities to continue on and as a police director or as a chief. And then I saw the job posting here for Akwesasne. It was a shot in the dark for me at first. I said, never would I have thought I would have been considered, but not only was I considered, in the long run when the process was done, I was the successful candidate and hired. So I wasn't coming here blindfolded, because I had worked prior with First Nation communities, never with a Mohawk community, although I did grow up neighboring Ganawage. So as a adolescent and teenager, played hockey with or against friends from Ganawage. So I was exposed to a certain extent to the Mohawk culture, but never as much as the other cultures that I had to deal with on a professional basis. So I kind of knew what I was getting into when I came here, and don't regret. I'm not looking back. I'm just looking forward. And that's the reason why I'm here now in Akwesasne, because I felt a certain zone of comfort being able to work in First Nation community.
Okay. All right. So I appreciate that, Shawn, for again sharing the information sharing some information with us about who you are and your background, as well as your interest in working here in our community. One of the items that we wanted to talk about, at least highlight, we did go into a little bit more detail at the last session of August 20th, but we received more questions about recruitment and the educational requirements to become an Akwesasne Mohawk police officer, as well as an overview of what the training may look like. I know that right now there's actually a competition or a posting for officers to come in to apply to the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services. So if you could walk us through what the requirements are to apply for Akwesasne Mohawk Police Officer, and then provide a quick overview of the recruitment and process, and then we'll go into a bit of the trainings.
Yeah, for sure. As you stated, Grand Chief, we have a posting out for new hires. So that's the first thing. Any interested candidate must be following our website or seeing a posting out from MCA that AMPS is looking for new candidates. And as we speak now, we are. The first step, and people may not look into depth into it or pay too much attention, but it's very important, because on our end, we do consider that if an applicant does not submit a complete application form, they will be withdrawn right away from the process. So it is important, even as an applicant, that all your documents are in the package that you have to submit to us, because it's the same thing as when you prepare a court case. You can't send a court case if it's not complete. It's the same thing here. You can't apply to be a police officer if the first step of filling in an application package is not complete. So it's something we do not look past. Very important. You have to submit a complete application package. Afterwards, second step, upon receiving confirmation that everything is in order and that you're ready to go to the second step, would be to successfully pass the physical evaluation testing, after which there will be an interview. After the interview, there's psychological testing, which is based over a 2-day period. There's one day that will be a psychometric testing where it'll be all question answers. And the second day will be an interview with a psychologist that will go over the question and answer that you provided the day before. Then there'll be a background check. And then finally off to the Ontario Police College, where you must be successful in your basic training to afterwards come on as a constable with AMPS.
Okay. So some of the questions that we have received, is it a last resort to hire people who are not from here? If they fail, do they get to try again? So I guess this is really about the processes of bringing in, and people that aren't able to make it, are they able to apply again at some point?
Yes, people could apply again when the second posting comes out. We have the preferential hiring policy, which is in place. So priority will always be given to Akwesasne or people from other First Nations. And when in need and we have no choice but to hire, well then, if we have to look outwards, we will, but only successful candidates.
Okay. And again, to the minimum requirements, what are the minimum requirements again?
What is required is a high school leaving certificate, 19 years of age. Like I said before, everything I've enumerated before. So the minimum is high school leaving certificate, be of maturity, be of 19 years of age, a valid driver's license, and successfully complete every stage of the process of hiring.
All right, so that's a bit of information on the recruiting process and the requirements to apply for the Akwesasne Police Services. Again, as mentioned, the currently a process underway right now. There's a posting out for individuals to be able to apply to be an Akwesasne police officer. We'll visit our website, or you can also call the Human Resource Department of the MCA. One of the questions that we got, Shawn, was around training, and was verbal judo training. Is there verbal judo training provided to the officers through the OPC or their training that's done?
What I think the question, the intended question would be, before moving on to using an intermediate arm, whether it be the baton or pepper spray or the taser, could there be a verbal intervention before going hands-on with somebody? And yes, it's always the first type of intervention an officer will do before resorting to force or a weapon. This is what's taught nationwide. It's called the National Use of Force Model. And it starts obviously with a verbal de-escalation. So this is taught nationwide. It's not only for Ontario or Quebec police departments, it's from coast to coast. And yes, it is taught at the Ontario Police College.
Okay. Do you know, Shawn, if we have any officers right now that are fluent in Mohawk?
Yes, we have 3. And they will be called upon on occasion when it's time to deal with elders from the community who better understand Mohawk than English. They will be put to use at that point in time.
Okay. And the Mohawk Council had a program available to staff, which has been suspended right now. Is there a program, is that same program available to officers, or is there any incentives for officers to be able to learn the Mohawk language?
Yes. When it was running, we had some officers that were benefiting from it.
Okay, that's good to know. So last time we spoke, we talked about specialized training and relying on some external resources from whether it be the SQ or the RCMP. One of the questions that came in from the community was, why do we not have specialized training for our officers here? So in situations where we have to rely on the outside to assist in perhaps investigations or serious crimes, what's the possibility of having some of those trained experts here? And if there is, please tell us. If there's future considerations, please let us know about that.
Well, right now, all our officers are fully trained to do police work. Our investigators, some of our senior, more well-seasoned investigators are capable of conducting murder investigations, and that's not a problem. Where we could run into a problem, or where we do have to ask, I shouldn't say a problem, but where we do have to ask for assistance either from the OPP or the SQ, is when in examples, let's say for forensics, where there's specialized fingerprinting required, or a different type of technological investigative techniques that are needed. We have no choice but to call upon the Sûreté du Québec or the OPP. One that comes up more often than other, and that we're exploring the future possibilities, is having our own forensics officer. So this is something that I'm actually in the process of looking at right now to see if it's possible for us to set up our own little forensics unit here, because that's probably the service that we require the most often from outside agencies. And for us, that would be the least costly, in a sense that because of the size of the police department we are and the funding that we have, you know, not saying that it's a luxury. It's not a luxury because it's a work tool, but is it a necessity? It isn't a necessity because it's offered to us by the OPP or the SQ. But would it be practical that we have our own? Yes, it would. Would it save time? Yes, it would. And could we do it? Yes, we can. So that's why I'm looking into it. And eventually, maybe in the near future, I hope that this could happen.
Okay. Thank you. Just looking back and talking about training and specialized services, we used to have, prior to their retirement, was Rudy and Roger, and Rudy was the canine. Is that something that's in the horizon or planning for the Akwesasne Police Services, and that's the recruitment of a dog?
Well, we had looked into it last year to see the feasibility of being able to provide that service once again. I'm not excluding it because personally, I'm in favor of having a canine unit. I've worked with them in the past with my prior organization. They do have their place in the police workforce. To see now where we are right now would be difficult to be able to house the canine unit in our existing building. In the near future, may there be an opportunity. I hope there will be. And if that opportunity for us is to be able to provide the dog with his or her own working space as a police officer, I most definitely will look into that avenue of bringing back a canine unit to AMS.
Okay. All right, thank you, Shawn. So we are live on the MCA Facebook page. It is September 28th, where this is our second follow-up session on community policing. Our first one was August 20th, which is available on our MCA Facebook page under the videos as well. It is on our Akwesasne, our Mohawk Council of Akwesasne YouTube page. So we're just going to take a pause there with chatting with Shawn about some of the operational stuff. We will come back to that based on some of the questions that we received. But Gary, I want to turn to you on behalf of the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Commission. So can you just let our community who is watching this evening and who will watch later on know who the current members are of the commission?
Yes, currently we have for the district of Snai, Esther Jock and Caroline Peters. For the district of St. Regis, we have Janine Hall and Joanne Jackson. And for Cornwall Island, we have Donna Delarmy and myself.
Okay, and you currently are the commission chair right now?
Yes.
Okay. Some of the questions that we had received online as well as prior to the last session was the community wanted to know a bit more about the role of the Outsourced Mohawk Police Commission. So could you explain in a few words what the role is of the commission?
Yeah. According to the charter that we have, the role of the police commission is to make sure that policies and procedures are in place and that the officers are in line with them, so that we're able to deal with each of the policies to make sure that individuals don't go off stream or off policy. So if an officer goes out in the community and he does something wrong, a community member has a right to file a grievance or a complaint on him. They put it in writing and they forward it to the commission, and the commission takes it and shares it with the chief of police, and appropriate action is taken place, whether it's a write-up, verbal write-up, or whatever, according to the general personnel policy and according to the rules of the union.
Okay. So there's we'll go a little bit into more detail a little bit later on complaints, but that complaint by the community member against a police officer, is that handled by the commission?
The commission takes it in, and along with Shawn, we work on what the procedure was to see whether or not there's a clear violation. If it's a clear violation and if it happens to be anywhere in the criminal, then Shawn takes it from there, dealing with it.
Okay. Gary, how often does the police commission meet?
The police commission is supposed to meet monthly. but there's sometimes where we can't get a whole quorum. So we've missed a couple meetings, a few. We do apologize for that, but we are trying to maintain a monthly meeting.
Okay. Is there any session, is that session open to the community, or can the community address the police commission at any of those meetings?
What we are changing to is that if an individual or a couple of individuals would like to attend our meeting, that we would ask that you give us a call. We're just drafting policy on how to do it now, and possibly changing the charter to reflect that. Because right now, our current charter says that it's not public. But what we're hoping to do is make it more public, where a community member can come in and address the commission a half hour prior to our regular monthly meeting, and then we hear their concerns or their issues.
Okay. One of the questions that we have received, and I think it's important for community to understand as well, is filling vacancies, or how does somebody, what's the process to be able to get on the police commission?
For the commission, that falls under council's authority currently because of the charter. The charter states that the council is the body that selects individuals. I know after our term, it's a 3-year term. When our term comes up, council does a call out. Individuals from the community fill out a letter, send it into council, and then council makes a selection. A district chief, the district makes a selection.
Okay.
In our charter that we're looking at changing, we would like to possibly, we're tossing around ideas of possibly having that as an elected position to go along with the school board and membership board along the same times.
Okay. Through the last couple of weeks, we had obviously questions about the commission and their role. You've outlined some of the role of the commission. One of the things that sums it up a bit, I guess, is what would a regular commission meeting look like? What were the agenda items? And if those agenda items, does it include any reports from the chief of police?
Yes. What we have in our commission meetings is our agenda includes the minutes of the last meeting to do approval. We have MCA portfolio comes in, does their reporting. Each of the district chiefs or our portfolio holders come in and they can express any concerns they have or anything they'd like to bring up from community members that they've heard from. And then we go on to the chief of police's monthly report, where he does action items on what they're working on currently. Personnel issues that he deals with. The statistics he shares with us are basically the number of calls and the number of arrests, stuff like that, that shared with the community in another communique. And then he deals with external and internal complaints. If any of them come in, we are aware of the issues and the complaints, and we work with him to help settle them. And then we go on to district reports. So each of the commissioners all talk about what they, if a community member talked to them or anything they see or anything they think that's lacking, they'll bring it up there. And then chairperson does a report at the end of the meeting. And I talk about what I have heard, because normally what happens is, if by chance we miss a meeting, Shawn and I will sit down and go through what's happening so that I bring that information back to them. And that's where I would do it at that time. So our meetings usually last around 2.5, 3 hours. It depends on how heavy it is and the lengths of discussion that we have on all of them.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gary. Shawn, I'm just going to switch to you, then I'm going to go back to Gary on this. There was a question about reporting to Ontario and Quebec. So as you know, and for the community's information, the Akwesasne Police Service is funded by the federal government, and the 2 provincial governments. That's Ontario and Quebec. There's some language in our policing agreement that talks about reporting to the provinces. Shawn, can you tell us what sort of reporting is done to the provinces?
Well, the same activity report that we send out to the community and that I present to the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Commission is shared with the governments, as well as the UCR, which is the Uniform Crime Reporting, a report where it's statistical only, that is shared with the governments.
So that form, is that something that's every police service reports to the provinces or?
Yes. And as well, to our funders, we must report on utilization of the budgets that are allocated to us.
Okay. Gary, I'm just going to go back to you on reporting. There's some language in the funding agreement that talks about the provinces being able to request minutes of the commission meetings.
Yes.
Is that, do we provide regular report? Do we provide the minutes to the provinces, or what, or when would that happen?
Normally, what we have, according to the agreements that are in place, I believe that if there's an investigation and something that has happened, which is big, the provinces will request possibility of the minutes of the meetings. They have never done it. They haven't asked. I was reviewing the current one that we do have, and it does say that a report can go to Quebec on the activities of the commission. So I believe that the report that I give council on an annual basis, they can get a copy of that if they wish. They haven't asked for it, so we're waiting to see whether or not they request it.
Okay. Okay. So it's fair to say that the statistic report is provided to the province, which is the same thing that's provided to the community. And then
Yes.
the Mohawk Council does an annual report. Is that provided to the province as well?
No, we haven't done it, but if because I personally believe that council's our governing body, so we should be reporting to council on a regular basis. If council wishes to share that with the province, then that would be council's decision to do so.
Okay. Well, just say that the annual report is available on the website, so it's not directly sent to any province at a request, at least under the police services, but it is available on our MCA website. Shawn, we're going to go back to you to talk a bit about some of the operational stuff and the questions that we've received. So Gary has covered what has been provided to the provinces as far as commission goes. You've let us know that statistics are provided. I think those same statistics are actually provided in the monthly newsletter as well on occasion. It rolls up the number of calls, etc. There was a question that has come in about if you're encouraging your members of the police services to interact with the community, and how do you evaluate it? And wanting the community member says get them to walk the streets of Ganadago here.
Well, obviously, I encourage it. I encourage my officers to get involved with the community, interact as much as possible. As far as here in Ganadago, there may be some parts of the village where officers could safely get out of the car and patrol on foot. I'm thinking of the point in the schoolyard, but to systematically walk the streets of Ganadago would be hard because there's no sidewalks. Cars go by, ATVs. There could be a risk for officer safety, and then we end up with a CSST case if somebody gets injured. So yes, we encourage, but for certain parts of the village only. To answer your other question, as far as excuse me.
Okay, well, we'll take a pause there while you.
I'm good. Sorry.
Okay.
Just I swallowed my saliva the wrong way. As far as how do we measure it? Well, sometimes we'll get phone calls directly from community members stating, "Well, oh my God, quite impressed with what your officers did or their implication." As sometimes I'll get a phone call saying, "Well, they're not getting it." It goes both ways. Sometimes could be positive, sometimes could be negative. But that's a tool to measure community satisfaction in terms of my officers' engagement. There's other activities that are easily measured by me when it's organized events, whether it be by our community service officer or by other annual events that are repetitive where we are implicated on a yearly basis. Those have been practiced for years, and we're still going on with the tradition of always being part of those activities. So there's different ways to measure, But the most satisfying one is when you get a phone call stating, hey, good job, you know, or I get an email saying so-and-so or your police force as a whole, we really appreciate what they're doing. So I would say that's the best indicator for in terms of positive feedback. Also,
Okay.
2 years ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we put out a community survey that was well received. It was positive, much more positive than the one that was done about 4 years ago. We're looking to do one in the near future. Hopefully, there'll be a greater community implication involvement in it, because if we get a larger spread of people providing input and feedback, for us, it'll help us direct our actions for the future and how we should engage with community and what activities the community prefers or which ones they would like to see us in. So I encourage everybody to, once they do receive the survey, to fill it in and send it back.
Okay. We just want to switch back to training and some of the questions that we received. We've seen some different movements nationally, regionally, including within the community around sexual assault. And we did touch on this last time in our session of August 20th about processes, but I think it's important that Shawn, you highlight for us some of the additional training that the officers receive to be able to deal with sensitive situations, and perhaps talk a bit about processes for somebody who wants to file, a complaint if they around sexual assault or other offenses like that. If you could walk us through a bit of that as well.
Well, I'll break it down as we go along, and so everybody gets a clear understanding. All our officers receive basic training, and during basic training, they're put through scenarios or different situations where they will have to respond to a sexual assault case at one point in time during their career. As well, afterwards, officers received for senior officers receive additional training in regards to sexual assault, interviewing, and files. And yearly in our block training, we always do a refresh on sexual assault files, pardon me, and how to proceed with them. So they receive basic training, they receive senior officer training, and they receive an annual refresh when we do our block training. On top of that, they have the possibility of requesting to meet with the female officer. If it's not urgent, it's not something that has to be taken care of right away. If the victim, we're talking as a rule, female, could be a male as well. We got to keep that in mind. But if the request is and the victim feels more comfortable speaking to a female officer, we could arrange for that to happen. As well, since we spoke about it last time, we know there was a list that was put out and names were put out there to be proactive in this whole situation, which is not only limited to Akwesasne, it's to all policing across North America. We know what's going on right now. We've decided to assign a constable. It's 40 hours a week. If it lasts 6 months, it lasts a year, it lasts a year and a half. I really don't care. I just want I want every historical file for sexual assault to be reviewed once again by this well-seasoned officer. I want the files to be reread to make sure that there was no rocks left unturned, no questions that were left unanswered, and to make sure everything was done appropriately. And if a file needs or merits to be reopened, and that witnesses be spoken to a second time, we're doing it. So there's, I encourage anybody who thinks that in the past a complaint they filed may have gone wrong, or for whatever reason they feel that their answers were not, they didn't get answers to their questions fully, to come to the office. They'll get to meet with the officer that's been assigned to this, and they'll be able to go over their historical case together, and it'll be obviously confidential. We have a room set up for that right now, and we're going to go through every file, and it'll take the time it takes, but I want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to pop up to say that AMS didn't do their due diligence in the day, or they're not doing it today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Gary, one of the questions was who has the authority to hire and fire? Maybe you can add some context to that as far as the police commission goes.
Yeah, for the police officers themselves, sergeants, all along that's Shawn's realm. And for the chief of police, it's between myself and the commission and the executive director, Heather Phillips. So
Okay.
those are the two that can do firing and hiring.
Okay. So there was a question that who does the chief of police report to, and does he report to Abram? And he does not report to me. There is only one position in the MCA that reports to myself and council, and that's the executive director, which Gary has talked about. So the chief of police is responsible for the hiring and firing of officers, and the commission, as Gary has talked about, is responsible for the recruitment and termination of the chief of police. Gary, I don't know if this falls in the realm of setting hiring policies, but one of the questions that we got was a suggestion, or I guess maybe it's even a question of why when the Mohawk Police Service goes to hire individuals for police officers, why do we not consider putting publicly saying who we're considering hiring prior to hiring them, and giving the community an opportunity to provide feedback on the individuals?
It's just that something we haven't never done. I would believe that we'd have to follow the Labor Canada according to the hiring practices of Mohawk Council. And currently right now it's not worded that way to do that. So that's one of the reasons we don't do, like every other organization doesn't put out a list when they're hiring someone. So we'd have to check to see that under the labor code to see whether that's legal or it can be done. But we can look at it.
Okay. Shawn, we're going to go to you about complaints. This we've gotten lots of calls about, sorry, not calls, questions about. It was one of the topics that we've talked about. If somebody wants to file a complaint, we'll say just in this instance against a police officer for their conduct or what have you, that somebody wants to file a complaint about and thinks that they have done something wrong. Can you tell us what the process would be for filing a complaint against an officer?
Sure. We'll start by dividing up Quebec and Ontario because there's two different processes for each province. If the event happened on the Quebec portion of the community, you have the Quebec Police Ethics Commission, where you could file your complaint against a member of the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services. You don't even have to come to the police station. You could go directly on the website and fill in the complaint form. This is all explained as well on our Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services webpage. If it happens on the Ontario portion of the community, well, then it would be a direct complaint here to the police department, and then in turn, I will hear the complaint, and my deputy chief will investigate it. If the complaint is deemed a disciplinary matter or an ethic matter, it'll stay within those two realms of investigation. If we see that the complaint is of a criminal nature, well, then we will call in the Quebec Provincial Police to investigate, or we'll call in the Ontario Provincial Police to investigate, because we'd be in conflict of interest to investigate a criminal file of one of our own members. If the officer involved on the Quebec portion, because there's another investigating body for Quebec, it's called the Independent Bureau Investigations. If the police officer, throughout the course of his or her duties, interacts with somebody who dies while they're in their police custody, or if there's use of a firearm, or if the complaint involves a person from our community or any other First Nations community, it's an automatic. It's the Independent Bureau of Investigations that will take over. On the Ontario side, there's a possibility of one day it being the same. It's called SIU, it's Special Investigation Unit. And that would be if one day we do decide to opt in the Ontario Police Services Act, in which we are not right now. So if ever there's an infraction that could lead to potential criminal matter, it would be the OPP for the time being on the Ontario portion.
Okay. So you mentioned Quebec, and we were asked last time when we talked about this, why is Quebec hearing our complaints? Is that required, or can these, or is that just an option, and there is still the option to file locally?
well, it's in the Quebec Police Services Act, which we fall under, because as we know, policing is a provincial matter left up to the provinces, and we receive our powers from the Ministry of Public Safety in Quebec. If somebody doesn't want to go the official route, and they would like it to be taken care of at my level within the station, it's something I recommend for something maybe that's not as, not that big of a deal. If the officer, you would just like the officer to be spoken to, or, reminded, to be careful or to be more polite or something of that nature, well, then there's always a possibility, come and meet with me in my office and we could talk about it, and we'll, we'll come to an understanding, see how we could take care of it. But that's really on a voluntary basis. It's not something that I would prone for you to go down that route, because sometimes people say, I don't want to bother, they're too busy or they have better things to do. No, we don't. If we want us to get better, we have to know these things. And sometimes, unfortunately, if 10% of the population does things, sometimes that could be, impolite or completely, basically wrong to do. Well, 10% of the police officers will do that. Police officers are taken from the population. So a percentage of people that act that way will act like that in the police department. So one, it's good for us to know. And two, well, sometimes the measures need to be corrected. And I encourage people to come forth with it.
Okay. Gary, earlier you mentioned if a complaint is sent to the commission, it's then worked in collaboration with the chief of police. Complaints against the chief of police himself, is that something the commission deals with?
Yes, if there's a complaint against the chief of police, then it would be brought up between the executive director and myself, along with some of the commission members, to go through and see what violations are and how severe they are and what would be warranted on our actions. If it's termination, then we would move forward on that. If it's not as bad as if it just warrants a write-up, then that's what we would do as a joint working group.
Okay. Is there a time limit to file a complaint against the chief of police?
Like I said, we don't have that in place right now, other than within the charter. We are looking at having a lot of our policies redrafted. So I believe what we would look at is like a 30-day turnaround. That's the normal process that other complaints have been handled with.
Okay. Shawn, on the complaints against an officer, is there a timeline on that?
Well, for the ethics committee, it's 1 year from the date of the alleged infraction, or 1 year from the date that the infraction is known. What is the difference?
Okay. There's a question here. Are you considering hiring more auxiliary or special constables?
It's something that I'm looking at right now. I would like to get our special constable program up and running, and to serve many purposes, but mainly to be able to recruit and retain local youth or young adults that would like maybe to become a police officer one day. Obviously, they won't be police officers, they'll be special constables, but they'll get to see what it is to interact and to do some like para-policing, if you want, where they'll be enforcing community laws, also doing prisoner watches, transporting prisoners. So it'll free up time for the police officers to stick to police duties and for the special constables to help out in that form. And also, if somebody becomes a special constable and says, hey, chief, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I don't think policing's for me, but this is what I'd like to do. Sure, no problem. I mean, we're not going to throw you out. You're hired, and you're going to keep on working for us. So it'll serve several purposes. And if the candidate's lacking a few things, we'll see that. So we'll be able to coach them while he or she's with us and say, look, you're not ready right now, but maybe in a year or two, you'll be ready. Let's work on this, work on that. And, we'll help you to be successful in the process. Because right now what we're seeing is often we see young, good potential candidates, but they fail, but probably they'd make good police officers in a few years from now, but they kind of lose interest because you get discouraged and then other opportunities come up and you move on to something else. I think if we keep them under our wing in that capacity, I think that we may be able to develop future AMPS officers from local hires.
Okay. Speak of local hires, there's a question that came on the Facebook post about, says, thank you for hosting an information session for us candidates, so people considering applying. In regards to the certified CPEC check, must it be vulnerable sector, a regular CPEC check, or both?
A level 3, which is both vulnerable sector.
Okay, and so that's completed prior to somebody applying, or is that completed after they've gone through a certain part of the process?
It'll be in the package when the future officer or the officer to be fills in the package I spoke about at the beginning of our presentation this evening. It's clearly outlined in there, and that's where we'll see it, and that's where we'll go over it.
Okay.
It'll serve as a screening tool.
Okay, thank you. This question came in twice about, and this is a bit about process, and we did talk about this at the last session, but we'll go through it again for community members who are just joining today. There seems to be concern about officers responding at high rates of speed through the U.S. portion of Akwesasne when responding to other parts of the community. There seems to be a feeling that they're not taking in consideration the safety of everybody around them. Can you shed some light into that? Is that acceptable? When this should not be happening? And perhaps if there is an incident or an instance, excuse me, that somebody feels they should file a complaint on that, can you shed some light into this item for us?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, I have been made aware of certain incidences where officers have gone through different portions of the territory at high rates of speed. Rest assured, they're all looked into and dealt with accordingly. We do have a no pursuit policy in place, which means the following. High-speed chases, none, unless the circumstances require it. But it could be done only if being prudent as well at the same time. No use speeding to try to get somewhere if you never get there. That's what the message I pass on to my officers, and that's what I want the community to know as well. So police vehicles traveling at high rate of speed not necessarily means they're in pursuit. It could be that they're answering an emergency call where a police response is needed immediately. Example, hold up in progress, home invasion in progress. So when you see the police car going by speeding, doesn't always, or a domestic dispute, doesn't always mean that they're chasing somebody. It could be because they're responding to a call for service, which requires them getting there. But once again, like I said, you never put your life in jeopardy or the life of a community member or any innocent bystander to get there. Take your time and make sure you get there. I'd rather you be late than we all be sorry after. So, and when it comes to high-speed pursuits, there's different ways of investigating as well. You don't have to absolutely pull over the car. If you recognize the person that's driving the vehicle, or if you have a plate number, there's no use for there to be a high-speed chase. You know who the person is. We'll deal with them at a later time. So, and there's different techniques too. If possible, we could put a spike belt down and, basically stop the pursuit right there and not have to go to a pursuit, because sometimes it's called ahead of time. The police officers, if we're lucky and we could get there and lay down the spike belt, we'll do that. So basically what everybody should remember is no speeding, no high-speed pursuits unless it is justifiable.
Okay. One of the questions we got, does the chief of police and the deputy chief work at the office?
Yes, we do work at the office Monday through Friday. And as chief of police, I'm available 24/7 if there's an emergency, as well as my deputy chief.
Okay. So that's a regular, no, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or?
Yeah, well, we're here more than that. We put in more than 9 to 5 on a daily basis, but that's our working hours usually are from between, we're here anytime between 7:30 and about 5:30 every day.
Okay. I understand that the Akwesasne police officers have a union. And so does that union prohibit you from dealing with disciplinary matters?
No, not at all. And AMPS is no different than any other police force across the country. Police forces are unionized. Obviously, when police forces begun years ago, most police forces weren't. And over time, they have become unionized. Could we still deal with them in terms of discipline? Yes, we can. The employee is entitled to representation, and the employee has the opportunity to grieve as well if he or she is not in accord with the disciplinary measures that will be handed down on my part following a complaint or investigation for whatever reason. So do we work hand in hand? Yes, we work hand in hand. Myself, my management team, and the association. Does it permit us, or does it impede us to hand out discipline? No, it doesn't. But everybody has a right to representation, like a criminal case, or if somebody's given a ticket, you're allowed to go to court and plead your case. So it's the same thing with my unionized employees. So there is a process. There's the labor code. There's our working agreement, the collective agreement with the APA that I have to respect as chief of police, and as well as themselves as employees. But if ever we come to a difference of opinion or a disciplinary matter, they always have that right to have representation and to grieve the matter.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of our members of our portfolio online. So we've been able to listen to some of the information that Shawn and Gary on behalf of the commission have shared. I just want to, so AMPS and justice, there's been a question about what AMPS and justice's relationship look like. And Connie, and you as part of the portfolio for justice, can you just, is there a relationship between the Akwesasne Police Service and Justice, Department of Justice? And perhaps there's been a few questions about community bylaws and what we're doing here at the MCA to either update them or modernize them, or perhaps even repeal them. So let's start with the first part, the relationship between justice and the Akwesasne Police. Could you shed some information on that?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Shawn and Gary, for your comments tonight. So with the Justice Department and the policing, recently, we've had the compliance program who had been developed to manage the enforcement of our community laws. That program has now been moved over to the police station and is now under the direction of the chief of police. We haven't ironed everything out yet, but we are in the process of getting everything moved over there, and I'm sorry, my hair is getting too long. Getting everything over there so that there'll be smooth responding to the community concerns now. So I'm hoping that's the first step in us getting a stronger, larger compliance program so that we don't have them in different places. I believe they always should have been under the umbrella of law enforcement. So they would complement each other. Second, as far as the laws, yeah, the Legislative Commission had been active again, and they were doing a very good job in creating more laws and reviewing laws. And actually the community might remember that over the last couple of years, they did a call out and had community engagement when they were working on what the community wanted to see as far as law enforcement went. Like everything else in the world, that had stalled due to COVID. Recently, we have picked up the Legislative Commission working to develop some more laws until the end of the year. And we're hoping that though justice develops the law and AMPS enforces with the compliance program, the community needs to play a role as well, because when we're developing these laws, the community is the body that develops it, that reviews the development of it and says yes or no to the law. So when we're saying yes to it, we have to be part of the enforcement. That means we have to kind of do our part before we're calling police in to do theirs. So I think, yeah, I think they're working good. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question that came in for council was whether or not we were considering putting cameras up on any of the MCA buildings and whether or not funding would be an issue with that. Daryl, I'm just going to go to you on that one. Do you have any insight that you provide on that question?
Yeah, I guess they're looking into installing cameras on a majority of the buildings, not only for a safety component of it, but a liability, so they can see what's happening, what's going on in the surrounding buildings, also for security. And I don't believe that funding source should be an issue because it is for public safety, and it reviews and gives us an opportunity to see what's happening in our area, because there's a lot of stuff after hours happening that we could benefit by having cameras on our buildings. So yes, we are looking into it, and I believe some of our buildings already do have cameras. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Recently over the summer, and we have received a number of complaints, concerns, we'll say concerns, about from the community in relation to the number of boats on the water and some of the initiatives that the council undertook to help mitigate some of the concerns and risks. Vanessa, I know that you were on a committee of council that worked on the waterways. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about the interactions that you have had as portfolio with the chief of police, what the initiatives of the waterways committee have done, and maybe a little bit of the role of what the district chiefs or the portfolio chiefs are in relation to the Outsourced Police Service and the Outsourced Police Commission.
So thank you. So part of the role of our district chiefs to be on the portfolio is to bring the concerns of our community members to the police commission as well as to the chief of police. So a lot of the concerns with the waterways we received from the community, but we also made the police commission and the chief of police aware of the different issues that we were having on the water concerning safety, concerning boaters in our areas, especially during this time of COVID-19, where it is very scary to have mass gatherings around, and when those things cannot happen on land safely, then they definitely don't belong on the waters as well. So as part of that, we put up signage, and we continue with our efforts that will continue in the spring. So far, we have put up signage for no wake zones throughout the Snide Channel. And we are working on larger signs that will go on Yellow Island, as well as public safety signs to warn people, because we do consider that this COVID-19 will continue on into next boating season. So a lot of the signs were put up in the community, as well as we had an awesome community initiative which also contributed signs to our efforts as well. So it is really good that we work in partnership with the community on these efforts to keep our islands and waterways safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Shawn, we're just about out of time this evening. I'll go through a few more other things, but the Marine unit, it's getting a little cold right now, but can we expect to still continue to see the Marine unit out in the water? And what are those guys doing out there?
Yes, definitely. You'll be able to continue on seeing the Marine unit on the water until water freezes over. Obviously, the time of season is winding down for pleasure boating. So the Marine officers will be out there for fishermen, whoever needs help from AMPS. They'll be there for people's safety. They'll also be there to detect and report any or intervene in any illicit activities that may be taking place.
Okay, thank you for that. There was a couple of questions that were received in relation to an MCR that was submitted. It says that when the old police agreement was expiring, the MCR submission form to approve a new agreement deemed it urgent. The agreement must be signed by all parties by March 31st, 2019. Otherwise, the Akwesasne police will no longer be able to legally intervene on the Quebec portion of the territory on April 1st, 2019. Is that the position of the MCA? And I can say that the submission forms that are attached to all resolutions are provided by staff. This is not the position of the MCA. The resolution was passed in time prior to the expiring of that agreement. It wouldn't mean that a police services would cease to exist on March 31st, 2019 at 12 a.m. But this was done administratively to put a bit of urgency on the resolution. We had some questions about ATIP forms and access to information. Those are all administered through the Executive Director's Office of the MCA, meaning that requests for information can be made through their office. We did receive a question about a request that had been made. We will be following up internally with the administration on that request that was made to find out why it was not actioned upon. One of the questions that we received this evening is, why is Abram speaking? If the police agreement, Article 6, says AMPS is not politically, AMPS is to be politically independent from the political authority. So that is in reference to directing the police force. Tonight, we're not directing the police force. In fact, this session is about sharing information with the community and ensuring that the community understands what the mission of the police, police department is, what the roles and responsibilities of the police commission is on behalf of council. And then the members of council have spoken to some of the things that they're working on and what their role is in relation to this. So this is not political authority over the police services. We completely respect and we expect all of those authorities to be followed. We did have a question in relation to are we working for our own Kahua people, or are we just trying to impress an outside system? I can tell you that we're not looking to impress anybody from the outside. I can tell you that council and the police commission are committed to ensuring that our police services provide a top-notch service to our community, and also that we are transparent and accountable all the way around. If members of the community feel, as we've talked about, complaints that one of the police officers' conduct or actions were not in line, or that they're outside of their ethics, and the processes have been defined, as well as the chief of police at the same thing. If there's Gary has outlined how the chief of police is held accountable by providing reports to the commission, that if a complaint comes in, they will deal with that complaint. There was a question asked about how we report to the outside. Gary has went over that we do not report to the outside other than statistical purposes. We don't provide any other information unless it's requested, and I do believe Gary mentioned that that hasn't been the case where we've provided to the outside additional information that they haven't requested for the purpose of a review or therefore. So are there any closing comments from anybody on the system this evening? I'll start with Shawn, and then I'll go to Gary, and then I'll go to the members of council, and then we'll wrap up for this evening. So Shawn, we'll go to you.
I hope we've answered the majority of the questions that could have been not answered from our previous meeting. I'll say it again, like I've said the other two times when I spoke outside in front of the station and on our last Zoom conference, such as tonight. I'm always free for questions. I'm available. Either you could call or come by the station. I'll be more than happy to welcome you. My door is open, and my phone number is listed, so there's not a problem. I encourage anybody who has any questions that are left unanswered to give me a call.
Thank you. Gary, we'll go to you.
Same thing here. I'd like to thank Mohawk Council for hosting this and organizing it. It's greatly appreciated that I can share the information from the commission. If anybody wishes to contact me, if any more questions that they do have, they can reach me on Facebook or Messenger. I have my cell number for work, which is 613-551-4824. You can give me a call and ask me a question, and I'll try to help as much as I can. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Daryl, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go to Connie, and then I'll go to Vanessa.
I just want to say thank you for everyone that joined, Shawn, Gary, council, for providing a great update to the community. I hope it answered a lot of the questions that were out there that came forward. If you have any questions regarding police and anything public safety, please look me up, and if I can answer the questions, I will. Thank you.
Connie?
I want to say ditto. But yeah, I want to thank Shawn and Gary for taking the time to go through all of this, the Grand Chief for moderating, and Shannon for your assistance. My co-chairs in public safety, I think it's important that we keep the lines of communication open in all areas here. It's important that the community understands the work you're doing and the parameters in which you have to do it in. So again, I thank you all.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to our community for taking the time tonight to watch, to ask the questions, and for our members here to provide answers. And I hope that we have provided some answers to your questions. But if you have any concerns, questions, complaints, suggestions, or solutions, I'm available all the time if you just want to reach out. So I thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you to all of you. So I do want to thank the community this evening for joining us. It is September 28th. This is our second session that we've had on community policing. This was in response to the community wanting more information about processes, about how to address complaints, wanting to know more about recruitment of officers, how to get a job with the police services. We undertook this. This is our second session. August 20th was the first session. We will, as we continue to move forward, have other sessions virtually with the Mohawk Council on various subjects. But I do want to thank all of the members on the panel tonight for assisting with today's discussion. I do want to thank the Akwesasne Police Services for the work that they do in keeping our community safe, and all of the officers on the front line that are ensuring that everybody's safe especially during this pandemic and everything that's related to that. So to the rest of the community, thank you. Have a great night. Please stay safe, and we will talk very soon. Yamagoa.
Nada.